Hi, my name's Natalie, and welcome back to Rhetoric 101. In today's episode, we're going to be focusing on the concept of ethos. Now, before we get into it, let's do a brief recap of where we left off on episode 1. We defined rhetoric as the art of persuasion, and we also made an important distinction between arguing and fighting. Arguing, in the rhetorical sense, is a productive disagreement, something meant to build understanding and influence, not just something to win or shut someone else down. With that foundation in place, let's look at how persuasion actually works, starting with ethos. Now, first of all, what is ethos? The concept of ethos comes from Aristotle, who gave us three rhetorical appeals: ethos, logos, and pathos. You may have heard of these before in some of your other classes, but we're going to dive deeper into what exactly they are and how they work in rhetoric. So ethos is about credibility, character, and trustworthiness. It answers the question, why should I believe you? As Heinrichs explains in his book, persuasion does not begin with logic or emotion. It begins with character. People are far more likely to be persuaded by someone that they trust rather than someone who simply has the strongest argument on paper. In other words, ethos is often more powerful than logic itself. Ethos itself is built off of three key qualities: virtue, practical wisdom, and disinterest. First, virtue. This refers to shared values with your audience. When a speaker demonstrates that they align morally or ethically with the people they are trying to persuade, the trust increases. For example, if you're appealing to the shared principles like fairness, responsibility, or community well-being, this helps to establish virtue with your audience. Second is practical wisdom. This is about experience, expertise, and sound judgment. It's not just having credentials, it's about actually showing that you understand how things work in practice. Someone might have a degree, but practical wisdom comes from them demonstrating real understanding and good decision making. And lastly is disinterest. This doesn't necessarily mean a lack of interest. It means that you are unbiased or that you're appearing unbiased. It's about showing that you're not only serving for your own interest, but that you are prioritizing the audience needs over your own personal gain. This makes your credibility increase. Together, these three elements, virtue, practical wisdom, and disinterest, create persuasive authority. Next, let's talk about how ethos is created. One of the most important things to understand about ethos is that it's not fixed. Just like your reputation, it's something that is actively constructed in the moment of communication. Your tone, word choice, confidence, and delivery can all shape how credible someone appears during an argument. Even a strong idea can lose persuasive power if it is delivered poorly or with uncertainty. In addition to this, in today's world, we also have what might be called digital ethos. This includes things such as your social media presence, professional branding, public statements, or other online behavior. In a digital environment, credibility can be built very quickly, but it can also be damaged just as fast. One post, one comment, or one inconsistency can shift how an audience perceives someone's trustworthiness. Now, to follow up on that, this just goes to show that ethos is something that you find in everyday life. It's not just used in speeches or politics. It shows up everywhere. For example, think about a student trying to convince a professor to adjust a grade. The student's success will depend not only on the argument itself, but whether the professor views them as responsible, honest, and credible. This means that if the student hasn't been showing up to class, or has had issues with consistently turning in assignments late, the professor is much less likely to view them as honest and responsible, and therefore are much less likely to adjust that grade. Or let's consider a politician speaking to voters. Their policies matter, but voters are also going to ask, do I trust this person? Do they seem honest? And do they understand what I care about? In both cases, ethos becomes the foundation of persuasion. As Heinrichs emphasizes, without trust, persuasion fails before it even begins. This also does bring forth the question, can ethos be manipulated? The short answer is yes, but that doesn't mean that it should be. There's a difference between genuine credibility and a manufactured image. Someone can attempt to perform trustworthiness without actually having it, especially in media or online spaces. This is where ethics becomes central to rhetoric. Persuasion should be responsible, and building ethos should involve integrity, not deception. And it's not just the responsibility of the speaker. The audience also has a role to play. We have to evaluate ethos carefully, asking whether the credibility is real, earned, and consistent, or whether it's just being performed. So, to wrap up today's episode, ethos is credibility, character, and trust. It's built through the three main qualities: virtue, practical wisdom, and disinterest. And while ethos can be carefully constructed, it is also something that must be grounded in authenticity and ethical responsibility. In the end, persuasion starts not just with what you say, but who people believe you are. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.